I had always considered myself a rational and level-headed person. I scoffed at ghost stories and dismissed urban legends as mere fabrications of overactive imaginations. But that was before the stalking began. It all started innocently enough. I noticed someone following me on my way home from work one evening. At first, I thought it might be a coincidence, a stranger heading in the same direction. But as I turned down one street, then another, the person behind me never wavered. My unease grew with every step. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that this person was watching me, studying my every move. I ducked into a convenience store, pretending to browse the shelves, hoping they would pass me by. But when I looked out the store's window, they were still there, standing just outside, staring at me with cold, unblinking eyes. My instincts told me to call the police, but I hesitated. What could I say? There was a person following me. It sounded absurd even in my own head. So I paid for a candy bar and nonchalantly left the store, hoping to lose them in the bustling city streets. But no matter where I turned or how many times I doubled back, they were always there. Never too close to arouse suspicion, but never far enough to make me feel safe. Panic bubbled inside me as I realized this was no chance encounter. I was being stalked. That night, I barely slept. I locked all the doors and windows, convinced that this stranger would somehow find their way into my home. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the wind outside sent shivers down my spine. I had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. The next morning I called in sick to work and went to the police. I explained the situation and they promised to look into it, take statements and patrol the area more frequently. But I could see the doubt in their eyes. They probably thought I was exaggerating or just paranoid. Days turned into weeks and the stalking continued unabated. I became a prisoner in my own home, afraid to step outside, afraid to be alone. The feeling of being watched never left me, like an invisible noose tightening around my neck. I had no idea who this person was or what they wanted from me, but I knew they were relentless. I installed security cameras around my property, hoping to catch a glimpse of my tormentor, but they were always just out of view, a shadowy figure lurking at the edge of the frame. The footage showed nothing more than a vague, menacing presence. I tried to confide in friends and family, but they too doubted the severity of the situation. Some suggested therapy, convinced that my fear was all in my head. But I knew better. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting. One night as I lay in bed, I heard it, a soft, sinister whispering coming from outside my window. My heart raced as I crept to the window and peered out. There, in the dim light of the street lamp, I saw them, their face obscured by a hood, muttering words I couldn't quite make out. It sent a chill through my bones, a primal fear I had never known. I called the police again, this time with a renewed sense of urgency. They arrived quickly, but by the time they did, the stalker was gone, leaving behind only a lingering feeling of dread. The officers assured me they would increase patrols and keep an eye out for anything suspicious. But the nightmare persisted. As the days turned into months, my life spiraled into a never-ending cycle of fear and paranoia. I became a recluse, seldom leaving my home, constantly checking locks and peering through curtains. I had lost my job, my friends, and my sanity. I became obsessed with uncovering the identity of my tormentor. I scoured the internet for any clue, any lead, but all I found were dead ends and false promises. It was as if my stalker was a phantom, always one step ahead of me, taunting me with their presence. Then, one fateful night, I received a package at my doorstep. It was a small, nondescript box with no return address. Trembling, I opened it to find a collection of photographs, pictures of me, taken without my knowledge, in various places around town. Some were recent, others from years ago. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. This person had been stalking me for a long time. I knew I had to involve the police once more, but as I reached for my phone, I heard a voice, a chilling whisper right behind me. "You can't escape me, dear," it hissed. I turned, but there was no one there, only the darkness of my empty home. I fled, leaving everything behind, the photos, my phone, my life. I knew I couldn't outrun this tormentor, but I had to try. I found myself in a remote cabin in the woods, far from civilization. I thought I had finally escaped, but the stalking only intensified. Every night I heard their whispers outside my window, echoing through the silent woods. They were always watching, always waiting. Their presence, an inescapable nightmare. I had become a prisoner of my own fear, a prey in a never-ending hunt. Now, as I sit here in this desolate cabin, I can feel their eyes on me, their malevolent presence closing in. I know I can't hide forever, but I'll do whatever it takes to survive. My only hope is that someday, someone will believe my story, that someone will finally put an end to this relentless, unending nightmare. The isolation of the cabin was both a curse and a blessing. While it provided a modicum of safety from the prying eyes of my relentless stalker, it also meant I was entirely on my own, cut off from civilization and any form of assistance. It was a double-edged sword, and I was teetering on the edge of sanity. The days dragged on, marked only by the slow descent of the sun and the unsettling feeling of being watched. I had no internet, no phone, and no way to contact anyone for help. My supplies were dwindling, and I had no choice but to venture into the forest for food and water, all the while knowing that they could be lurking in the shadows, waiting for me. As the weeks turned into months, my mental state deteriorated. I began to doubt my own perceptions, wondering if I had descended into madness. The constant whispers, the eerie feeling of being watched, it was all too much to bear. Sleep eluded me, and I became a shell of my former self. One evening, as I huddled by the cabin's flickering fire, I heard a sound that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. The unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from the darkness. I clutched the only weapon I had, a rusty old fire poker, and crept towards the door. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they were just outside the cabin. With trembling hands, I flung the door open, ready to confront my tormentor. But there was no one there. Only the inky blackness of the night and the haunting whispers that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. I stepped outside cautiously, my eyes scanning the trees, my ears straining to catch any sign of movement. And then I saw it, a shadowy figure, lurking in the periphery of my vision. It was them, my stalker, finally revealed. In a surge of anger and desperation, I charged towards the figure, swinging the fire poker wildly. But with every step I took, they seemed to drift further away, always just out of reach. It was as if they were a phantom, a specter that defied the laws of reality. I pursued them deeper into the woods, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath ragged. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if the stalker was taunting me, leading me further into their nightmarish game. Then abruptly the whispers stopped and the figure vanished into the darkness. I was left alone in the heart of the forest, surrounded by the eerie silence of the night. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lost them again. Exhausted and defeated, I stumbled back to the cabin, my mind in turmoil. I knew I couldn't continue to run, to hide, to live in this constant state of fear. I needed help, and I needed it desperately. With the first light of dawn, I made my way back to civilization, my body battered and bruised, my spirit broken. I sought out the authorities once more, hoping that this time someone would take my plight seriously, that they would finally believe that I was being stalked by an unseen, malevolent force. But even as I sit here, recounting my story to skeptical detectives, I can't shake the feeling that my tormentor is still out there, watching and waiting, ready to strike again. The nightmare continues, and I fear it may never end.